What's poppin', everybody? This is the cartoon kid Ray Rollins. Today, I am going to be reviewing a good old classic episode of The Simpsons from season 8, episode 15, called Homer's Phobia. Now, if you've been watching the channel for a good minute, man, you know how this whole thing goes. Before I start breaking this episode down, I'm gonna have to give y'all that episode breakdown. In short, man, this entire episode basically centers around Homer's fear of homosexuality. I was gonna say homosexuality. Homer is basically a homophobic. This episode starts off with the Simpsons basically trying to get money to pay their gas bill, I believe it was. So Marge ends up pulling out an old family heirloom, which I want to say was given to her by her mother or her grandmother. I can't remember. That's not necessarily important. So they go to this antique shop to try to sell it, right? And the owner of the shop basically tells them that, hey, this is just a whiskey bottle, man. This isn't an heirloom, yada, yada, yada. And the Simpsons are having this whole conversation with this guy talking about all these different types of mementos and collectibles in this shop. And the guy basically tells him, he's like, yo, man, there's a whole lot of things in this world that look like junk, but they're really priceless. This guy's name is John, by the way, and he is the antique collector, as I said. Now, any type of collector is going to find worth in a whole bunch of things that the average normal person wouldn't. And as John is having this conversation with the Simpsons, Homer basically invites them over to the house, telling them that there's a whole bunch of worthless stuff at their house. John basically hits it off with the Simpsons, and after dinner, Homer's talking to Marge and whatnot, and Marge's like, hey, don't you think there's a little something weird about John? And Homer's like, I don't know, man, basically showing that he's oblivious to what Marge is trying to point out. And Marge basically busts it down to him in the simplest form, and she says, John is a homosexual. And Homer does this whole little scream and gets all scared and whatnot. He's like, oh my god, I dance with a gay, yeah. Throughout the remainder of the episode, Homer is basically distant towards John. He doesn't like the fact that he's a homosexual, and he's showing, I guess you could say, somewhat of a disdain for John. Bart ends up taking a liking to the guy, and Homer has a fear that Bart is going to turn out like John. He doesn't want his son, his only son actually, to be a homosexual. And the remainder of this episode, to keep it short, is Homer trying to bring Bart over to the straight side. Alright? Now, that is the summary of this episode in a somewhat expansive but short summary. And we're going to go a little bit deeper with the entire episode in a little bit. But first, I want to hit you guys with my first impressions. I seen this episode numerous times as a kid. This episode came out in 1997, and my first immediate thought of rewatching this episode is like, man, how would this episode be if they tried to, I guess you could say, redo the plot? Let's say hypothetically this never happened in 1997. This episode wasn't released. If this shit was gonna be released in 2021, how would it play out? This is just a theory on my part. I truly believe that if they brought this episode out today, man, it would have been a hell of a lot worse than what it was back in 1997. I'm not saying this episode was bad, but what I mean by that is, instead of Homer thinking that Bart's gay, shit, they would have made Bart gay in this episode if it was released in 2021. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, but I feel like if this was released today, that they would have went that extra mile and actually made Bart gay. Now, if you're a fan of The Simpsons, you know Bart Simpson's not gay. He's had a lot of crushes and relationships with several females throughout the Simpsons cast, so we know Bart's not gay. But I feel like, as I said, if this episode was released today, they would have made Bart Simpson gay, which I can't see Bart Simpson as a gay character, okay? What I'm saying in short is, with this episode coming out in 1997, they did a pretty damn good job. Homer's homophobia was done really well in this episode, and I'm going to explain that a little bit more when I get to my review portion of this episode. But my first initial thoughts is, I'm fucking happy as shit this episode released in 1997 instead of 2021. Because if it was released in 2021, oh boy, it probably would have had a frightening change in Bart Simpson's character. But let's talk about some moments, man. As I said, this whole entire episode is centered around Homer Simpson and his, I guess you can say, disdain or non-acceptance of homosexuality. And he's trying to veer his son onto the straight path. Now, in a way to do this, Homer is basically trying to bond with his son, because Marge tells him, maybe you should bond with Bart more. Because Homer Simpson, we know him to be the drunk father who doesn't really give a shit about his kids. He just cares about drinking beer and watching TV for the most part, and taking his naps. One of the moments that really got me laughing is, after their first activity, Homer basically asked Bart, how do you feel? Because Bart was basically sitting somewhere, I can't remember where for the life of me. And Bart's like, man, I feel like I kind of want a cigarette. And Homer's like, good, okay, let's get you a pack. What kind do you like? And Bart's like, anything slim. And Homer just basically is like, man, come on, man. That's not the right answer. And the reason why this kind of stuck out to me is I always made the joke that cigarettes are for females, okay? And cigars are the male or masculine version of a cigarette. And cigarettes are basically the slimmer version of a cigar. So the true right answer for that situation would have been for Bart to be like, man, I want a cigar. Homer would have been a real happy man in that instance. But the second bonding activity that they had was Homer taking Bart to a steel mill to show him how a majority of blue-collar men do their work in America. So he comes across this big buff-ass dude. I forgot his name. I want to say it was Roscoe. And, they're showing Bart and Homer around the steel mill. And Homer basically sees that all the steel workers in this mill are gay. And Homer hollers out, man, you guys are all dicks! Or something like that. And one of the gay guys is like, be nice. That right there had me rolling. But what really got the chuckles going was when they went on their break. And they all started dancing and shit. And Homer was like, man, this is not going well, man. Oh, fuck. This is not going well at all. Homer basically goes to Moe's with Bart. And Moe basically tells him, he's like, yo, you know what will really turn your boy straight is if you have him shoot a deer. Moe basically hits him with, the number one thing that will make a man straight is sending him off to war, because shooting a man will set any man straight, essentially, right? But he basically puts the idea in Homer's head that since Bart can't go to war, the next best thing would be to shoot a deer, take the man hunting. Homer and his pals take Bart hunting and whatnot. And this is where the whole redemption for John comes in, man. Homer, Moe, and Bart and all those guys are waiting in the woods, waiting for deer to come by so Bart can shoot them. But John basically reveals later on in the episode, obviously not to Homer and them, that all the deer basically migrated, that there's no deer around. So Bart basically ends up falling asleep. Homer is all sad because he can't, remedy his son. So they basically end up heading back to town. And Moe is like, yo, you know what? Hold on, Homer. Christmas is coming early this year. And they basically go to a whole pen filled with reindeer. And Homer basically tells Bart, like, yo, shoot one. Bart didn't want to. He didn't want to hurt any reindeer. But Homer's like, he gets all up in his face. He's like, man, I'm going to turn my back. But when I turn around, I want to see a whole pile of dead reindeer. I'm like, damn, that's kind of fucked up, Homer. Shit, I know you're a piece of shit like that, man. So Homer turns his back, a gunshot goes off, and basically all the reindeer are free. These reindeer basically end up running amok and stomping the shit out of Homer in a stampede. And Homer, one thing I can give him credit for, he was protecting his kid, man. He was making sure Bart was safe. I will give the man credit for that. That honestly has to be the one main redeeming thing of this entire episode. But here comes John to save the day, and he has this Santa Claus collectible or toy, whatever the hell you want to call it. And Santa Claus basically ends up leading the reindeer back to safety, and, they were able to subdue them in a sense. This whole situation ends up making Homer have somewhat of a respect for John. And John basically comes to the conclusion that, hey, if we can get every gay man in America, or rather the world, to save your life, then everything will be all good. As the Simpsons are heading back home, Lisa basically tells Bart that Homer thinks that he's gay. And Bart's like, he thinks that I'm gay? Really? And like I said, we all know that Bart's not gay, man. And we just basically cut to the credits. And what I like here at the end is that the Simpsons Writers basically dedicated this whole episode to the steel mill workers in America. There's a hell of a lot of other moments in this episode that I want to point out. One of them is when Homer was basically strangling Bart in front of company, and Bart's like, hey, company, we got company. Homer just basically hits John with, oh, we'll just be a minute. And he's just still choking the shit out of him. All true Simpsons fans know that that's Homer's #1 gimmick, is to strangle the ever-living shit out of his son. And hell, Bart does deserve it at times. So, to get down to my review. As I said in my first impressions, this episode came out at an interesting point in time. Even today in 2021, man, there's people who aren't accepting of the LGBT community. Me personally, I don't give a fuck what you are, man. I always said that anyone who judges people by the color of their skin, their gender, disability, sexuality, anything like that is a piece of garbage. And I stand by that. As Martin Luther King said, people should be judged by the content of their character. And that's 100% true. You should be disliked or viewed with disdain because you're a piece of shit. John was a 100% good guy in this episode, and Homer had no damn reason, besides his sexuality in his eyes, to turn against the guy. If John's gay, John's gay. So fucking what? That doesn't mean shit, you know? John's still a cool-ass dude at the end of the day, and Homer should have treated him as such. So the #1 thing that this episode taught me, personally, is that there's some true pieces of shit out there in this world. The thoughts that Homer had against people of the LGBT community are 100% fucked up. And there's absolutely no doubt that there's people like Homer Simpson was in that episode out there today who view people who are gay in a shitty manner just because of their sexuality. And that's pretty fucked up, man. The payoff of this episode was definitely an eye-opener because Homer viewed John with such disdain just because of his sexuality. And what did John do at the end of the day? John ended up saving his life. And the somewhat redeeming part of this episode for Homer anyway is that he had a level of respect for John only because he saved his life. That doesn't mean that his opinions on the LGBT community changed, but it's just as John said. All we need to do is get all the gay people in the world to save your life, then, you know, you would be accepting of us, which is really fucked up, man. Another thing that I wanted to point out was when I was kind of doing a little tad bit of research for this episode. I didn't do too much. I just put 2 questions into Google. The first one obviously was the release date of this episode, and the second one was, when was gay marriage legalized in the United States? I knew it was in the early 2000 teens, but it was 2015, which was really surprising to me, man. You look at everything that you see now, where LGBT culture is essentially idolized and pushed very heavily. You would think that gay marriage probably was legalized in the early 2000s. No, that was actually really recently. And as I said numerous times, there are people still in the United States, at the very least, who view homosexuality as a negative thing, just because it's against their cultural and religious beliefs. One thing I can say that I really liked about this episode is that Homer's feelings towards gays can be 100% relatable to some fathers out there. He doesn't want his son Bart to be a homosexual. And like it or not, that is a fear that most fathers have. They want their sons to grow up, marry a nice, beautiful woman, and start a family of their own, because that's the cultural and religious norm. You're not going to see any father out there, and maybe you might, but you're not going to see any father say that, yeah, you know, I hope my son grows up to marry William or Mark or whoever the fuck of the same sex. You're not going to see that, man. The norm of men growing up and marrying women is engraved in us, man. So it's understandable why Homer had the reactions that he had. But I didn't mention this earlier. The other redeeming thing of this is that when Lisa basically told Bart that Homer thought he was gay, Homer told Bart that, hey, regardless of what you decide to do when you grow up, I'm going to be here to support you. And I guess you can say that is Homer's true redeemer at the end of the episode. While Homer's opinions on the LGBTQ community are very fucked up, in my personal opinion, they're understandable. The way he tried to change Bart's, I guess you could say, sexuality, although it didn't need to be changed, was kind of fucked up. But it was understandable. Homer, like most fathers, wants his son to carry on the family legacy, so to speak, and, most importantly, marry a woman. But even though he had these very screwed up views at the beginning of the episode, he had the redeemer of coming to acceptance of whatever Bart does when he grows up, I'm gonna support him no matter what. And for this episode to come out in 1997, a time where homosexuality, at least in my opinion, was not very accepted throughout the United States. It was frowned upon on that period. And looking back at it today, man, in 2021 is a real eye-opener. Kids who view this episode today should walk away from this episode with the notion that people should be accepted for whoever they are, regardless if they're black, white, whatever, skin color, sexuality, disability, gender. None of that shit should matter, man. As long as the person is kind, caring, and loving, kind of like how John was, they should be treated with the same love and respect as normal people, because that's what they are. They're normal people. They're just a little bit different. And I'm going to end it all by saying this. Like Martin Luther King said, I'm going to repeat it. People should be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin or their sexuality, their gender, whatever. That shit doesn't matter. As long as they're good, kind, caring people, treat them as such. My final review for this episode is a nice 7 to a 7.5 out of 10. I kind of want to give it a 7.5, and I kind of don't want to. I feel like this is an average episode. So, you know what? I'm going to hit it with a 7 out of 10, man. And once again, I'm glad as fuck this episode wasn't written in 2021, because Bart Simpson might have been a gay character. But that has been my review for The Simpsons Season 8, Episode 15, Homer's Phobia. This is the Cartoon Kid, Ray Rollins. Tell me what you think of this video, man. Tell me if you liked it. Tell me if you hated it. Tell me what you would rate it. And toss all your opinions and thoughts down in the comments box below. And until next time, you can check out any other videos that I got here on my channel. I love y'all, and I'll see y'all when I see y'all. Peace out, everybody.